Hello, hello. It is time for the annual Everything I Made in 2025, everything I made this year. And this is the first one that I will have ever done, so I'm excited to do this. I am not going to show you a huge number of things. I am not a particularly fast knitter. I work full time. So this isn't going to be one of those very large everything I knit this year videos with 30 or 40 items. But hopefully it's kind of representative of kind of how much I knit, but also how much I think lots of people knit in a year. With that in mind, I have got 9 items to show you. I have got 4 long sleeve things. I have 2 short sleeve tops, or sleeveless tops, I guess, and 3 accessories. I think that makes 9. And the first thing that I have got to show you is what I am wearing. This was my first finished item of the year, I believe. Although I don't think I'm going to show you them in order because I can't remember. This is the Cloud Blouse by PetiteKnit. This was something that I started in 2024 but finished in 2025. It is knitted in 1 strand of knitting for olive in the colour artichoke purple, and 1 strand of Cardiff Cashmere Brushlight in the colour muji. It's a very lovely kind of soft muted purple. I love this jumper a lot. This is actually one of my favourite knits from 2025. The blouse pattern initially I think is done with 2 strands of mohair. I don't particularly like mohair, I'm quite sensitive to it. So I tend to just swap it out for any other kind of fibre, really. The combination that I chose does make it more like a DK weight jumper, which is kind of what I was going for. There is a sweater version of this, but it's on much larger needles, I believe. And I quite like 4mm jumpers. I quite like a DK weight jumper. I like the way they look when they're finished. I like the kind of polish. So I chose to knit the blouse pattern. I really enjoyed making this. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It's not exactly kind of complicated in any place. It has these kind of ribbing cuffs. It sort of has 1 by 1 ribbing along the cuffs, and then there's a bit of stockinette which rolls. Mine no longer rolls around the sleeves because I've worn it so much. It rolls a little bit around the base and it rolls still around the neck, which was my favourite feature of this garment. Yeah, this is one of my 2, I reckon, top favourite knits of 2025. So there we go. You will have to excuse the state of some of these garments. I have not prepped any of them for this video, so they have been folded up in my drawers, they have been worn. This is what clothes look like when they're worn. The next thing I have to show you is my blouse number 1. You can see that it's a little bit sheer there. You can see the light coming through. This was a knit from much later in the year. I think this was something I knitted over summer. This was the first time that I had used silk. So this is the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. It is in the colour Poppy Rose. It is a really, really gorgeous pink. I really love it. This is a really basic, straightforward knit. It has a sort of contiguous, what I would call a contiguous shoulder construction, so you don't actually have to break the yarn. It's got kind of slight bell-shaped sleeves, a really lovely boat neck, which I think rolls in the pattern, doesn't really roll in mine, which I'm not mad about. And then the body is just kind of straight down. At the end of the body, I actually added in a couple of increases on each side to accommodate for my hips because I'm a little more pear-shaped. And I didn't want it to fit too tightly. This does have negative ease. I can't remember how much, maybe 10 centimetres negative ease. And I was initially quite sceptical about that because I thought that might be too much, but this actually fits quite relaxed on me, particularly around the underarms and kind of round my mid-stomach, the places where I don't really want clothes hugging my body. I was surprised by how well this actually fit me and how much wear I got out of it. For my first experience knitting with silk, it was generally a positive one. Silk, less grippy than other fibres, and I found that when I got towards the end of the balls, they would just become, the sort of bits that were left would become big knotted lumps, piles of mess. So I did lose a bit of yarn that I think could have otherwise been knitted into this garment. I bought the recommended amount in the pattern, which I think is 7 balls for a single toned garment. So you hold the silk double. And if you're going to hold the same colour double, then I think it's recommended you buy 7 balls. And I actually had almost a full ball left. So it's a really yarn efficient garment, I guess. I would love to make another one of these, and I would love to make it in maybe a cotton merino, so it's a bit more kind of winter friendly. I really, really love the shape of this. Yeah, nothing really to say about this other than pretty good. I don't know if I mentioned where or who rather designed that pattern, but if I didn't, it's My Favourite Things Knitwear. I think it was a very popular pattern. This next one, unfortunately, is both my least favourite garment of the year and my least favourite yarn of the year. Neither of them are complete disasters, although I probably wouldn't use the yarn again for myself, although I think it would probably make quite good baby knits. But this is the Cumulus Blouse by PetiteKnit. It's the V-neck version, so you can just see there, it's a pretty straightforward single stitch raglan. It has, I think there are decreases on the sleeves, but it's just a straightforward stockinette garment with I-cord edges all around. The reason this is my least favourite knit is really because of the yarn. So I'm not going to bash the pattern too much. The pattern is perfectly fine, and I will probably knit the pattern again, but in a different yarn. The yarn just really doesn't work for me. I think, so the yarn is Filcolana Merci, which is 50% cotton and 50% superwash merino. So it's lovely and soft. However, I don't like the feel of superwash merino with cotton. It just feels a bit plasticky. And I also think because of that combination and because it's 50% superwash, it rubs up quite quickly. And I don't think it stays looking as neat and polished as my 100% non-superwashed wool garments do. Having said all that, it still serves a purpose in my wardrobe. I wear this kind of casually when I'm wearing sort of trackies or something like that in the summer. Or if I just want to throw something over the top, I will put this on. But I just think it doesn't look very polished or neat. Particularly around the I-cord edges. I think any tension issues show up really predominantly in this yarn. And I also think I perhaps didn't accommodate for how much this yarn was going to grow when I was knitting the length of the body. So it actually hits my hips at a really weird point. And it's sort of, the I-cord sort of cinches in. I'll see if I can show you. If you can see that it just sort of cinches in right at the end here. And that sits on my hips really weird. It sort of makes it balloon at the bottom, and that's not the fit that I wanted. There is nothing wrong with the pattern. The yarn is probably perfectly good for baby knits. It's just not something I will use again. However, I do really like the colour. The colour is duckling. And it's a very lovely pale yellow, and it's one of my favourite colours. Okay, this is my last long-sleeved garment, I guess, that I made in 2025, and this is my most recently finished garment, I think. And it is literally just sleeves, there's no body. So I'm not going to bother showing this like that. I will put some pictures in and or B-roll. This is the Mist Sleeves by Slikt. I knitted this in Gepard Garn Teddy Deer Boucle. The colour doesn't really show up very well on this camera. It looks very red. It's not, it's quite pink. I will put some pictures in so you can see. It is their new cherry colour. It's really lovely. And it was a nice fun knit. I think it calls for something like 6mm needles. I think it's 6 or 7 depending on which mohair you choose. Obviously I didn't use mohair, I used boucle. I used 6mm needles. I knitted the smallest size. It's a really easy, quick pattern to knit. The boucle is very forgiving. It is very difficult to see where your stitches are, but having said that, it's very forgiving also for that reason. So you can't really see any mistakes, any ends, anything like that. The pattern has a really lovely cross over at the front. It has a twist detail on the front and the back. I knitted it to wear to a work function, to a formal dinner that I was going to for my job. And they went really lovely with my dress, and I was very, very pleased with them. It scratched the boucle itch for me. It was a new yarn to me, and a fun one actually. I enjoyed it. We are now on to sleeveless tops, and I knitted 2 sleeveless tops this year. I maybe controversially, quite enjoy summer knitting. And this next top is both one of my favourite knits of 2025 and my favourite yarn of 2025. So this is the Alva top by WeMadeWardrobe, and it is knitted in Sandnes Garn Lina, which is my favourite yarn for 2025. Sandnes Garn Lina is a combination of linen, cotton, viscose, I believe. It's generally quite affordable, I think. It's really hard wearing. It survives the washer machine. It's machine washable. It's perfect for summer tops. I knitted a couple of summer tops in this yarn this year, and I will definitely be doing it again next year. The Alva top was a test knit that I did for WeMadeWardrobe. And I believe the pattern originally calls for I think it calls for 1 strand of knitting for olive cotton merino. That makes quite an open gauge top, and I wanted something a bit more modest, something that I could wear to work. So I chose the Sandnes Garn Lina, and it worked out really, really well. I love this top because it's just so easy to wear on so many things. It's completely bra friendly. When I was test knitting this, I had a bit of a panic partway through because I had joined for the underarms and I tried it on, and the armhole gap was just so huge, and I thought there's no way that's ever going to cover my bra. But when you pick up for the armholes, you do these central decreases. I'll show you them here. You do these central decreases in the underarm, and it cinches everything in and really closes that gap. It's not a technique that I had ever done before, and it was pretty nifty. So I really enjoyed this top. I got lots of wear out of it this year. I'm sure I will get lots of wear out of it next year. My other top knit for 2025. I think I forgot to say with the last one what the colour name is, and to be honest I can't remember, so I will put the colour number in the description, but it's a lovely kind of pale blue. Might be called an icy blue, but I'll put the number in the description. This next top is also knitted in Sandnes Lina, and I will also put the colour number in the description. This was knitted in a kind of soft green. I think it's called light green, and I'm actually using this in a different yarn quality at the moment to knit something else. This is that way round. This is the Sabai top by Paula Strickt. It's a very popular pattern. I, again, was having a bit of a boat neck / neck moment this summer. I also got a lot of wear out of this, but if I knit it again, which I probably will, I would do a couple of things differently. Firstly, I really love the option for ribbing along the neckline. It just sort of stops it rolling quite so much. I enjoyed that. I enjoy the kind of edge stitches, which mean there's no kind of finishings to pick up and do along the armholes. and those kind of edge stitches continue down the side of the body in this sort of, I don't know, ribbing section. It uses up barely any yarn. I think I used 3 and a bit balls of yarn, so it's really good if you've got kind of leftovers of something. And the yarn, Sandnes Lina, again, fantastic. I love this colour as well. It's absolutely one of my colours. The only thing I would say about this is that the armholes are really deep on this pattern, and I'm sure you've heard other people on the internet say this before. And I attempted to prevent any issues with the armhole depth by decreasing it. I knitted less rows. However, it still only just about covers my bra, so in future I would make the armhole depth even smaller. And I actually would possibly knit the next size down, so I knitted the second size in the pattern. And I actually think I would knit the first size in the pattern if I do it again. I don't have any particular problems with this one. It is quite loose fitting, and that's what I was going for at the time. But I think there's space in my wardrobe for a tighter fitting version of this top as well. And it is much looser than I thought it was going to be, actually. So it's not going to be like really tight if I go down a size. But that is my Sabai top. Last but not least, I have 3 accessories to show you. 2 of them are effectively the same thing. You won't be surprised. They're Sophie scarves. So I made one kind of on a whim with some leftover brushlight, Cardiff Cashmere Brushlight from this project in the colour Muji. So this is my small one. I guess this is technically a Sophie scarf, although I own the pattern for the Sophie Shawl. I just decreased the rate. Yeah, I decreased the rate of increases. So I made sure that I was increasing less frequently to make this more kind of scarf shaped size rather than the shawl shape. And I just picked a smaller needle. I just used a needle that was right for this particular yarn, and that was that. I really like this project because you can just use up whatever yarn you have left, and that was also the case for this one, which did follow the Sophie Shawl pattern. This is 2 balls of Gepard woolia in the colour wheat that I had left over from a project. I had bought them to finish my dad's Christmas jumper last year, and it was just the wrong colour. I wanted a pure white. This isn't a pure white, it's kind of a, you can see it's kind of got a bit of a pink tone to it. So I used them to make this Sophie shawl. It's nice, easy travel knitting. And then the other accessory that I have is my penny gloves. So this is one of them. This, you can see, these are well worn. I needed some gloves, and I needed something fingerless that I could wear in the house and at work as well as outside. So I just made these with some leftover yarn I had. This is actually leftover from my very first ever knitted garment, finished knitted garment, which now no longer exists. I unravelled it. This is Majo Garn merino in the colour anemone, and I'm actually using the rest of it now to make a scarf, which I'm kind of freehanding, but it's just a tube, right? I guess it's kind of like the Vienna scarf. But I've put the pearl edges on it so that it matches these fingerless gloves. And then I'll have a nice little set. And that is it for things that I knit this year. So, as I said, not a really long video, but hopefully kind of fun to watch through nonetheless. I wanted to mention a couple of other things in terms of my hits and misses for the year. So I've already mentioned my favourite and least favourite projects and my favourite and least favourite yarns. I also wanted to mention a technique, a new to me technique that I've been really enjoying. I don't have it to show you because it's not a finished garment yet. I'm still working on it, but it is lace work in the Marielle scarf. That's by Maria Sverden, and I'm knitting that with leftover yarn from my Cumulus blouse, actually. And I thought lace would be really hard because it can look quite intricate, right? But it's really, all it comes down to is like knits, purls and yarn overs, basically. Increases, decreases, fine. And I'm really enjoying making the kind of flower pattern with the lace technique in that pattern. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was a knitting tool, I guess. So I use the Knit Pro metal interchangeable needles, and I wanted to upgrade my knitting setup without breaking the bank. So I bought a Knit Pro mindfulness swivel cable, because the cables I have at the moment are the fixed end cables and they get in the way when I'm knitting in the round all the time, especially if I'm knitting magic loop. This new cable, I've only got one at the moment, but it is genuinely hugely changed my knitting setup. Knitting is much more comfortable now, and that one cable cost me, I think, £5. So it's not a hugely expensive upgrade, but it has made a big difference in my knitting. So I wanted to mention that. Okay, that is everything I had to share with you. I hope you enjoyed looking through what I knit this year with me. Going into next year, I am not expecting to knit any more finished items. I'm taking a few whips into the new year with me. I think 4 whips actually. Yeah, no, 5, which is more than I normally have. But it does mean there'll be quite a few finished items when I do this video again at the end of 2026. In the new year, I think I want to be more intentional with how I test knit. I'm test knitting at the moment for Knits for Days, and I test knitted earlier this year for WeMadeWardrobe. And both of those experiences are fine. This is not a comment on either of those. But I just, reflecting on how much I knit in a year, which is not a huge amount, I just don't think designers should be giving people like 4 weeks or 6 weeks to knit a full garment. And you know, when you sign up to a test knit, you know what you're signing up for. The timelines are quite clearly stated, and that's fine. And I usually don't have trouble meeting those, but I actually don't want to knit to a deadline, I don't think, anymore. So we'll see. As I said, I do enjoy test knitting for both of those designers. And they're actually the 2 designers that I test knitted for last year as well. And generally I think they're both quite reasonable, so I have nothing against test knitting for designers that give reasonable deadlines, flexibility and things like that. But I think in the new year I just want to knit more intentionally on things that I am really excited about without a deadline. However, the thing that I'm knitting on at the moment, I just loved it so much that I wanted to knit it now, so I signed up for the test knit. But less of that in the new year, potentially. I would like to knit more texture and more fun, exciting things in the new year. I'd like to try colour work. I'm currently knitting a textured lace jumper, and I'm also knitting a cabled jumper. I'm enjoying both of those, so I'd like a little bit more of that in my life in the new year, please. If you have any aims or goals for the new year, let me know what they are. I would love to hear them. And I will see you in 2026. Bye, everybody.